third episode, I'm talking about who I am. Who's this guy? You see what I'm saying? This 37-year-old dude, newly 37-year-old guy on his couch with a podcast. Well, I don't want to call it a podcast really, because it's like just this project that I'm doing. It seems pretty fun. I get to figure out some audio stuff, some video editing stuff, and then kind of seeing how well it does. But yeah, man, we'll go over it, because I don't know if anyone even cares. You know what I mean? But I was like, well, it'll kind of give you a better idea of me, and yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of like something that would make for a cool part to go over. I have a mom and a dad. They're human parents. They're good folks. Yeah, they're cool. I grew up in Mississippi for like some really early years. Was a new kid there. I got bullied a little bit just because it was the early '90s. It was back in the day when McDonald's was giving away Hot Wheels cars as kids' meals, toys, and VHS was like you know, it was the main thing, bro. Um, '90s in Mississippi. I don't know. As a kid, it was cool because you had your imagination. I'm not sure if it would be as fun now. When you're an adult and trying to look for things to do, or when you're not going to take Hot Wheels cars and go sit in the dirt for an hour and a half. Like, oh man, there's this little town that I'm making. I'm out here in the dirt. That was Mississippi, from a kid's point of view, and it was cool. Um, kind of grew up watching Beavis and Butthead, man. Thought crime was awesome. Breaking the law, yeah, it's pretty cool. Um, when I was probably 5 or 6, man, my dad left his, or didn't, he got promoted. He was a federal probation officer. Yeah, he got promoted, or, worked his way into a different position for the U.S. courts in D.C. So, and who knew that having a federal probation officer as a father would do me some good, because I needed some guidance growing up, man. It was a different time of life. But I mean, anyways, so you go from small town Mississippi, where things are really slow, to Fredericksburg, Virginia. And it's kind of the halfway point between DC and Richmond. And both of those places are a little more expensive to live. So majority of people that were that had a military or government job, they lived in Fredericksburg, um, to kind of be able to make ends meet with the better paying jobs of DC and Richmond. And it was on that 95 corridor, you know what I mean? Like, north 95 ended up in New York, south 95 ended up in Florida. Pretty busy. Really, not back in this is probably 93 or 94 when I grew up there. So that was a cool time. Fredericksburg, it was a smaller town. I've moved away from there maybe 15 years ago, and it's grown, dude. The crime's bad. A lot of homeless people. It was pretty busy when I left, but anyways. So I mean, Fredericksburg, the '90s was cool. You had a dollar movie theater. It played older movies, and it was kind of a derelict movie theater. It was kind of old, but that was the kind of the small town vibe that it had back then. And lived there when the Beanie Babies craze was going on, when Furbies was, happening. Super Soakers were starting to die out a little bit. Um, Titanic, that was one of like the big movies back then, man. Everyone had to go see Titanic. Remember having the thick, like 2 or 3 VHS tape special edition so you could watch the whole movie. It was like 6 hours long. yeah, so that was kind of paints the picture of the time. And then I had a sister, man. I guess I have a sister, had a sister that was diagnosed with leukemia, so cancer of the blood, and I was like 8 or 9 or 10. I don't know. It gets really cloudy back then, and um, things didn't work out so well. And yeah, so she passed away, and that was a heavy hit to the family. And like, when you're that young and you get heavy feelings, or just like, I don't know, dealing with grief, man, it's a odd thing because it's just like this uncomfortable brick wall inside you. You know what I mean? That like it hurts, but you don't really have the words to explain it because you don't know what's up. And I don't know. I think it's just uncomfortable. Dealing with that situation, or um, if you don't know how to deal with those situations, and no one does. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that go through something, similar, some kind of traumatic deal that, I think that we just try to pile dirt on it and move on like everything's cool. But as a young kid, I didn't really feel growing up with that. You know what I mean? Like that was the main thing. Going to the hospital and going to the hospital and just the visits and stuff and the checkups and stuff. Going to Richmond was always felt kind of routine. That like that was the big thing in the house. You know what I mean? That was we were kind of dealing with, or not kind of, we were dealing with. And I don't know, when that was like the biggest deal and then she passed away, it's like you didn't really know who to talk to, because everyone was kind of going through it and you didn't want to like bring it up, so you kind of tucked it away inside and just like kept on going like everything was fine. And I think that, if you don't deal with grief, it'll, deal with grief or trauma, you know what I mean? Like it'll have a massive, massive wave of emotions that are going to be left undealt with. And you're going to try to deal with those emotions the best that you have. And, I think just, man, it's a unique situation and problem that I think that a lot of people, especially back then, I mean, and now, you're kind of like, you weren't told, but it was just kind of like, oh, you don't cry, you don't, like, you got to be strong, and just kind of mull it over and go through it like the best you can, act like it doesn't hurt you. But undealt with emotions will pretty much beat you some way or some form. You know what I mean? Like you'll go through, and I'd spend a lot of time. After that, she passed when I was like 11 or 10 or 9. One of those early years. And man, as soon as I figured out that you could self-medicate, that's what we was doing, boy. And that's not a good way to deal with trauma or deal with any kind of heartbreak, or because you're gonna go through a lot of have a lot of different experiences after that, and not great. So I think Fredericksburg, you have a lot of people, influences, bad influences, good influences, um, a lot of trouble you can get into, a lot of trouble you can make for yourself, and definitely hit the gas on all those decisions to kind of stay busy and keep my mind off it, and flood my brain with a bunch of unnecessary endorphins. And I don't know, because going through something like that, you feel bad, and it's kind of just something that's always, if you don't deal with it, it's always like there for you to, I don't know, I guess you're always searching for like happiness, whatever that may be. Um, or a good feeling, you know what I mean? So with substances, man, there's all different kinds, and there's all different kinds of feelings you can have, and I kind of got caught up in that. Didn't kind of, I was fully caught up in that for, I think, yeah, when I was 11, and middle school and high school, man, was, whew, a busy time in my life, man. I met a lot of people, um, made a lot of bad decisions, man. Didn't really know how to quite cope with what I had going on because, like, well, I had some friends that, like, you were able to be you with, and having good friends that knew you, man, and like that, oh, that's why he is the way he is. You know what I mean? Those are kind of people you bond with. So I had some good friends that we all didn't. We kind of were, throwing fuel on more bad decisions. um, so it was like a big campfire that we kept throwing gasoline into of bad decisions. Um, and it was an eventful time. I mean, those days we had AOL Instant Messenger. So at night when we got home, we could still chat with all of our friends. Nokia phones were starting to come out. So I'll talk about like the high school years. Middle school and high school, like Nokia phones were pretty cool. Like you go to the mall and get like new antennas for them or different, translucent phone cases for them. So texting was kind of big, but you only got but so many, depending on your phone plan, or like you could only talk to people, like after 9 o'clock, or there was some certain time, depending on what phone plan you had, that you could really talk as much as you want. So, oh, my minutes, you know what I mean? I can't go over my minutes, or data. We didn't have data then, and if you did use data, you could sign on AOL on your phone and be sneakily on AOL Instant Messenger on your phone, talking to your friends when someone else was on the computer. Those were the days where you had to call the internet. Dang, dang. It was slow, but we stayed pretty connected, man. It was cool. Video games, man. It was like, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 1 was like in high school. And I guess, yeah, and a little bit of elementary school. Super Nintendo was pretty big. A good amount of people had Super Nintendo. 64. Remember we got the Jungle Green 64 with Donkey Kong, the expansion pack. That was tight. So video games weren't like they didn't swallow up a lot of time. I guess depending on which one you played, like you could. But I mean, we skateboarded a lot too. A lot of me and my friends, like we lived in a neighborhood that was next to another neighborhood, and so everyone who skated would meet up at the church, or meet up at a different person's house who had, oh, Nick's mom built him a quarter pipe, or they built a fun box. We'd go over there and skate. BMX bikes were pretty heavy. Dave Muir, Haro bikes, Specialized bikes. The heavy era of BMX was like the 50-pound bikes. So when that wave hit, everyone was getting pretty knee deep into that. So I don't know, that was like middle to elementary school, like 99, 98. So that was real big. None of us really got into like aggressive inline or fruit booting. I think we would get, like, people just had rollerblades and stuff, so you would get it like, oh man, take the wheels out, and you'd grind something, but like not in public. You know what I mean? But it was always cool. They had the soap shoes that came out where it was just a shoe with the grind plate. You could grind on certain things at school. And like, one of our friends had them, so you'd be like, yo, can I try your shoes? wearing your homie's shoes, like, oh man, these are warm. still warm from your feet. So you're like, man, can I borrow this for, next week at school? Or a day, man, I could just like wear a different pair of shoes. And like the era of hand-me-down clothes. And then so there was like, baggy clothes weren't in style. It was just you were wearing clothes that weren't your size. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like, people's parents would buy them clothes and stuff, I guess, if you wanted them. But it was like, I don't know. Like I wanted like, the Osiris shirt. Oh, can I borrow like your Adidas with the 3 stripes for for school pictures, man? I'm trying to rock that. You know what I mean? So fashion was different. You know what I mean? Jinkos were a big thing, but no one had money to buy them. There was like maybe 2 or 3 kids that had a pair of Jinkos that you could slide a Nintendo 64 in the back pocket. You know what I mean? So those, yeah, they were kind of like, I guess baggy was the trend back then. But baggy just felt better because, I don't think we knew anything different. Like skinny pants. Look, back then, your sexuality would be questioned if you wore certain things. You know what I mean? Always wears. This dude's wearing fishnets. He's one of those. But who cares? We had friends that were gay. You know what I mean? That like that's just what they were, and I don't think it was such a big deal back then. I mean, more people joked about like, oh, that's gay, and it was just maybe a funny word back then. There was a lot of different words we used back then to describe like stuff that wasn't cool, or hey, he's a bundle of sticks, you know. But the '90s and like late '90s, early 2000s were a wild time. We had a lot of friends, dude. Like the skate parks, they were always busy with you'd get some friends, go to the skate park. The mall was another like sweet meetup spot. You had the mall, the movies, the arcade, like the fun lane. So you could go there and have the lock-ins. That was pretty cool. Like spend all night in this like go-kart and arcade place. Or we had the roller skating rink, the slap shots, where like my other homies, they would have like a lot of their indoor hockey tournaments. Ice park, indoor ice skating spot, where they used to have like the ice hockey tournaments. Brooks skate park, Curtis skate park, man, there was, you could go downtown. Downtown Fredericksburg was a cool spot. Man, there's so many places you could go. There's 2 different movie theaters. There's the one in Massaponax. Yeah, like the Regal maybe? Or Marquee. Marquee was down there. Yeah. And, yeah, I'm kind of all over the place with that. But, I mean, Fredericksburg was a cool spot. And for high school, man, it was a busy spot, dude. Like, you had Chancellor, Massaponax, Riverbend, Cortland, and then Orange was like the country one. I think it was like Orange. I don't know. I didn't go out there, man. We kind of stayed in the city, and I can't remember if Route 3, dude. It would kind of like take you out to like Lake of the Woods, or like it would go country the other further away you went. And we kind of just stayed all in Fredericksburg for the most part. So I mean, you have all those high schools. There's so many people. The football games was another big one. We didn't watch the football games. We went because there was chicks, other friends. You went to the football games to figure out what was going on for the weekend. It was busy, dude, real busy. And they always seemed to switch the school lines, man. So I went to like Battlefield Elementary, Battlefield Middle, Spotswood Elementary, Massaponax High, and then Chancellor. So I mean, like you would switch schools where you would just meet so many people, and then like you would meet people who knew people or skated with people who knew people, different people, and so your friends group just as you got older, man, there's just so many different people that you would bump into, and your friend circle would just get bigger. Like, oh man, I met him, I started skating with him, or there's chicks over there, chicks over here, so and so's sister met up with her friends, whatever. You're just so busy, man, and it was kind of like a absolute world to get lost in because like you were never home. you were you weren't at night, man. We were sneaking out. Um, you know, yeah, man, sneaking out. You had a neighborhood across the way you could go bump up to friends with. You had AIM that you were sitting like, yo, let's right now meet you at the park. And you'd actually show up. That was like a smoke signal that you like, you see it over there? You see it over there? We're gonna go meet, man. So it was busy, dude. And like in high school, man, once people started partying and yeah, I guess alcohol was around. You know what I mean? People's parents had liquor cabinets. It was always getting rifled through, filling up bottles back with water. I mean, you could mark the bottles, we filling it back up with water. You should have been like, we was getting after it. And for no reason, man. Um, but I think that the alcohol made it easier to socialize with strangers. And you were always meeting new people, and it just made that part easier. I guess. Yeah, I get it. You lose your inhibitions. You don't care as much, and you're kind of just having good times. You know what I mean? Loose, uninhibited, good times, and yeah. So you're doing a lot of that as often as you can. You know what I mean? And it wasn't really constructive. You know what I mean? We weren't making any great decisions when we were doing all of that. It was just like I don't know. It just kind of felt like one big party for the whole time. You know what I mean? If it wasn't like sipping on the bus before you go to school, why would you do that? I don't know. It's cool. It's not. It was. It. I don't know. School wasn't something any of us took seriously. It was just something that we had to go and do, and you know, it probably would have been better had we, taken a little more seriously. But there was just more fun in not doing it. You know what I mean? I think that we just stayed busy to kind of crank the dial on fun. Um, uh, so that's kind of how high school goes. And then I was dealing, or I still hadn't really dealt with like my sister's passing and stuff. And I think I probably did just to stay busy and not like, I think when things got quiet for me is when like you started that uncomfortable feeling kind of started creeping up on me, man. So I kind of self-medicated a little more than others. Um, I think I kind of got really involved with like, I don't know, no one was taking their ADHD medication. Man, I took that early on and I thought that was, man, I could focus on anything other than what like my feelings were. And kind of hella dabbled in that, man, way more than I needed to. And um, whew, went through a lot of. There was nothing. I learned a lot. You know what I mean from those days. Like you get tied up, and then you get addicted, and then you see what like addiction is, and why it happens, who it hurts, how does it hurt them, how does it not, you know what I mean? So like I think going through that addiction like pretty heavy in those years, and I think I might have been like, alcohol was never like, oh, you could be addicted to alcohol. It's like we just drank all the time, we just would do whatever all the time. But kind of knowing what I do now from addictions, it's like we got addicted at a really early age to pretty much anything or everything at that time. I mean, you had friends in high school that like, jobs paid $7.25 and you needed money to do a lot of stuff, or like money was like, oh man, we need money, you know what I mean? And it was put on such a high pedestal that you saw a lot of people doing whatever they could for it. Nothing like crazy, like selling their bodies. Just a lot of selling substances. You know what I mean? And with that, man, like you get all your friends that all your close friends were doing that, man. So like, with alcohol was just like, okay, that was not even really a big deal anymore. And then, other things was like, oh, you get that. And then like, oh man, you got that for this weekend, and you get that too, and we'll have this, and it's like a whole smorgasbord of everything. And then I started seeing like more and more friends like get addicted to just different things, but it wasn't like no one really knew what addiction was because we were so young. You know what I mean? It was just like kind of the norm to be addicted to stuff. But no one knew it. No one knew what like having a problem with something was. It was just something we did, and like keeping the party going. It was a lot of partying, man. Especially during the summers. It seems like the summers went by so quick. I remember like in my birthday is in June 4th. We had another buddy whose birthday was in 5th, another 6th, another 7th, another 8th, another 9th. So that would start the summer off pretty hard where, oh man, you coming to my birthday party? Yeah, what are you doing tomorrow? Going to so-and-so's birthday party. All right, well, everyone over here is going to go over there, and then we're all just going to keep going and going and going. And man, I think our parents, all of our parents were kind of busy working. They weren't, they were working, you know what I mean? And just trying to keep a roof over our heads. So we were all kind of like selling them stories of like, we're just going to go watch a movie over here, or we're going to go swim. You know what I mean? We're going to play with chalk and make a hopscotch board and go have a hopscotch competition over at fucking Cam's house, dude. Yeah, we weren't doing that. It'd be, oh man. But yeah, I mean, so we weren't being honest with our parents, but at that age, who really was? You know what I mean? We had ulterior motives in different things that we were um, had in store. You know what I mean? We had plans for other things, and yeah, I mean, you get through high school, man, and so not everyone. I mean, a majority of people were drinking. Some of the other crowd were doing other illicit substances. Other ones were starting to get into harder ones. We were all just, I wouldn't say we were bad kids. We were just distracted kids, and it's an easy thing to get tied up in like the life of partying. And then especially when you're broken, you know what I mean? Like you're just like, oh, trying to chase this feeling, chase this feeling, chase this feeling. And you get out of high school, man, and the party's kind of over, so you don't have to go to school during the day. But then like you're like, oh man, I really didn't have plans. I thought it was all gonna like work itself out. You know what I mean? Um, and it doesn't. Like you've really got a plan for what you want to do in life. You know what I mean? Because it's like middle school and high school went by pretty quick, and then you get caught up in stuff, man, and you don't see that happening. But it was like when you're self-medicating through something like that, and like, yeah, after my sister passed, we had my dad, like, his insurance was good, so we went to different therapists, like the Boys and Girls Club, like, not, I don't know the Boys and Girls Club, but there was like a Big Brothers Big Sisters, kind of got hooked up in that a little bit. But I don't think that you're really comfortable enough to talk to strangers about stuff that's going on. So like you just I leaned really heavy on the substances, and that kind of, I wouldn't say it destroyed my life, but it definitely fast tracked me to the rock bottom a couple times, and then you bounce off that and you kind of get it together a little bit, and then you slip a couple times, hit rock bottom again. Um, Couple treatment centers, you know what I mean? And you just have this like demon on your back for a while, man. And that's the only way that you know to deal with certain trauma, or to not be in a messed up mind state, or to deal with the things that hurt, man. Sometimes, I mean, for years, I didn't even want to talk about my sister or anything that, I had other issues with my mom. And yeah, I mean, and it would be those situations that would make like tears well up in your eyes. You have to like stop talking, and like, you wouldn't be able to say another word. You're just trying to hold yourself together, and I think until I was able to really talk about the things that kind of destroyed my inner atmosphere, in that sense, was I able to like move past it. But that took time, like until I met my wife now, dude. Like I wasn't really able to talk to anyone about, I just didn't feel comfortable. But then like that's the thing, that like the necessary work that you have to do, it man, none of it's comfortable, like self growth, um managing your emotions, your feelings, your being in more in tune with all that stuff, dude. That takes work. And it's like picking up rocks in the yard in 100-degree weather, um in a drought with no water. You know what I mean? Like it's not, the hard things are not going to be easy to deal with. And there's no shortcut, and I think that the substances and stuff, like I thought that was the shortcut, and I think a lot of people do, um, in that sense. Or just a more, and not a shortcut, but just a second nature, kind of like, that's what I do, you know what I mean? And um, until you can get that sorted out, man, it's going to be a hard road. So yeah, middle school and high school, and then after high school until like my early to mid 20s, like we were heavy dabbling in it, and then partying, dealing, all that kind of stuff. Um, then it kind of got switched into dealing like other, you statute limited guns and stuff like that. That started to bring a little bit more money. Then you had, um, things start getting a little dangerous, and you've kind of start nestling with the wrong characters, man, and you just know so many people that like you get to a point where it's like, I don't see this ending up very good. And um, after so many years with a certain town and getting to know people, and it's time to bounce, baby. So you kind of lose a lot of friends through that, or you meet a lot of people who you consider or acquaintances. You meet a lot of acquaintances. You get done wrong, done dirty. You and I apologize for some things I've done in my past too. You know what I mean? None of us are perfect. Especially when there's a lot of substances involved. You're not in your right mind state. You know what I mean? Like you're living in a chaotic atmosphere, man. And yeah, so you got to make an exit. And so I kind of started to tone things down, and started to focus on ways out. And my CDL was one of those things, man. And I remember, my buddy Tomoko, my Jamaican brother, he was like, "What do you want to go trucking? You gotta do it." And he was, hella supported me on it. And I never really had too many good friends that were like, "No, it's not gonna work." Or I had friends like that, but like he was the one supportive friend of mine that believed in me. You know what I mean? And him and I are excellent friends still today. Um, and man, that meant a lot. That someone kept pushing me towards it. And him and I would go to the coffee shop, and then I'd go home. You know, try to find another trucking company that would like accept me because of some charges I had in my background. And I was like, "Ugh, I keep getting shot down, but I know I'm gonna make. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here." I found a company that they eventually um, took a chance on me and then like put me through school in Colorado. Went to Colorado, did that, and then they bust us to Dallas, Texas. Boy, Stevens Transport. Hey, hey. Probably some graduates that might see this. Kingsburg, Colorado, man. You know what about the train coming through? Choo choo. You try to sleep at night. That's different. Kingsburg, Colorado, man. That's another. You know, that's where the people was at, man. That's where the trucking company was, or the trucking school. I think they're closed down now. But anyways, so yeah, I went and did over the road, said goodbye to the East Coast, decided to sail the seas from coast to coast, and yeah, I mean, didn't really. I put all the stuff down. Still kind of drank, you know what I mean? Because like, I don't know, drinking was like breathing. It wasn't really too. Everyone does it, you know what I mean? You get older and it's like, oh, 5 o'clock, man, everyone's drinking, or but I don't know. I think I just kind of drank here and there, and that's kind of always been part of the lubricant of life, so to say. Um, to I don't know. It made public settings a little easier. Dealing like learning to talk with strangers at different places easier, and I never really had a problem with just that because it was like, man, if you drink too much, you have to. In the morning, you can have a tough go with that, but it's more like a weekend warrior, you know. Um, but when I was over the road, man, I was like at trucking school. I got my CDL. That's a license. I couldn't. There's no jeopardizing that. That was my golden ticket out of where I was. So like, if you drink during the day, that one day you might have had more drinks. You might be able to still blow, something on a breathalyzer the next day. So I was like, man, I kind of when I was over the road, no drinking, man. I didn't miss it. You know what I mean? Because it was always like you're driving an 80,000 pound semi through cities, dude. You know what I mean? Like you're stopping at truck stops to crash out. With my trainer, Big Steve, man. And I think I had to do 90 days continuously living in a truck with a stranger. But thank God, like I got a cool, like, dude had a semi truck. He was in the leasing program. He had, full system in there. So we had subwoofers, the focal door speakers. Man, we was cranking it. XM radio is only cool for the first month because after that, it's just a radio station where all the songs get recycled and, you know, it your phone service doesn't work. I don't think Spotify or like iHeartRadio was out then. If it did, it was like when you only had cell service, and depending on what phone service you had, you didn't have service all the time. So coast to coast was kind of cool. I mean, you saw a lot of America, and it was kind of like it wasn't like we stopped at the Grand Canyon, saw Mount Rushmore. No, you saw the interstate, you saw the truck stops, you saw the shipping and receivers, and yeah, I mean, so there's that. With trucking, if you make time to go see all the sites, you can. Or if you have a good trainer that you can do it. A lot of my buddies didn't have good trainers, like getting a shower on the road is free when you fill up with 50 gallons or more of diesel at TA, Loves, other truck stops. And some of their trainers weren't holding them down with it, dude. You know what I mean? So I got lucky and had it really good. experience. Me and Steve got along real well. Um, and then took some off time. Went to Florida, where my dad was living down in Palm Beach Gardens. Kind of chilled for I think maybe a few days. And I kept in touch with one of my buddies at a trucking school, George. Shout out George, man. And his trainer, man, he got his CDL, and his trainer was not getting along. I can't remember what the deal was. I mean, you're living with a stranger, another trucker who's like over the road, and they make money off your miles that you drive. Most of them are on a leasing program, and so like they want to have students. They really money oriented. You can get it into a lot of greedy people. So I had a lot of friends that were like not having a good go with their trainers, getting dropped off at a truck stop, taking a Greyhound bus back to Dallas, hopping in with another trainer. Didn't have a great experience with them. But they had their CDLs, and through CDL school, man, they tell you that, it's your first year. No one wants you with no experience. You guys are da 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 da. Lies, bro. Lies. Every single one of my friends were getting jobs at, places back home, Class B jobs. I mean, once you have a Class A, you got a pretty big foot in the door at a lot of spots. I mean, yeah, you're going to be a beginner driver, but a driver anywhere who needs drivers, they will take a chance on you, bro. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that straight up. But my homie George was working in the oil field in Oklahoma, hauling drilling mud out of frac tanks and soil farming. They've got a lease hooked up with a farmer, your trucking company, where you go hook up with tanker truck. I had to get my tanker endorsement to go do that. 20 questions, easy, bang bang. I can haul liquids now. Before I was hauling like refrigerated fruit from drive-in to whatever, you know what I mean? Really wicked low pay. But it was a way out of Fredericksburg, man. And trucking was awesome. And, I guess if you've never done it, it's one of those things that you don't know until you do it, brother. And then, I mean, I had a grandfather who owned his own truck and trailer and hauled out here in Kansas. And so I knew it could be in my blood, or just that I could do it. You know what I mean? So, and he did it his whole life. Made a good living doing that. And so for me, my dad's like, you should maybe think about getting your CDL. And I was like, Dad, you don't know anything, dude. Like, life's gonna work itself out. I don't need my CDL. I eventually got it. You know what I mean? Because it's a different line of work. And I think growing up in Fredericksburg, man, I had a lot of jobs, dude. Like, started off, 14 at Wendy's. Work at Buffalo Wild Wings, Claire's, Kohl's. Yes, Claire's, the ear piercing spot in the mall. One of my buddies was working at Victoria's Secret, Cedric, big up. And I was like, yo, how did you get a job at Victoria's Secret, dude? He's like, man, I just went in there real clean and, did my thing, had my suit up, had a, dress pants, all the whole nine, and I'd be working in Victoria's Secret, man. And I was like, all right. I didn't pull Victoria's Secret, but your boy got Claire's. I told him straight out the gate I wasn't piercing no one's ears. But I mean, dude, so you get so many jobs, so many coworkers that like you can only make but so much money in that hourly deal that like trucking's another good way to make a living. You know what I mean? Like without having to stand on your feet all day, without having to deal with customers, coworkers, managers. I mean, you had like what was it? Like a trucking, the person who told you, whoever told you where to go, you had to deal with that your dispatcher, you had to deal with that person, and that's pretty much it. So, I mean, you only had really one boss, and you knew what the work was. You're driving, you know what I mean? You have, I think it was like 8 or 10 hours that you're just driving straight out after you do your pre-trip, your break, your post-trip. You got your 14-hour window that you could do that. We were all on e-logs at that time. And so that was frustrating too. I mean, there's a lot of deal a lot to deal with over the road, man. Because you deal with that, technically you have these hours to work, and those don't always fit in the hours that, okay, you go to sleep at, some people go to sleep at night. Most people go to sleep at night. Sometimes they would wreck your schedule. It's like, oh, well, you guess what? Your day's starting at 9 p.m. Well, I just woke up, dude. There's so many different ways that e-logs kind of put a wrench in the gears of that. So, I mean, anyways, the oil field was like, hell yeah, dude. My buddy George's like, yo, I'm getting, X amount of money a week. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, dude. And then I was like, to what? To go to this tanker, or to this frac tank, pull a load, go to the field, spread it, and then go back to the tank and do that over and over. He's like, yeah, and then sometimes you gotta haul water to the rigs, you gotta do this stuff. And I was like, bro, give me the number. I'm gonna apply, and I think I had some more home time because I'd been out on the road for a little bit, and like after you get done with your trainer, they send you to go and get a truck. Or they send you for some home time, or no, they send you to go get a truck, and then I went and had gotten this truck that was abandoned by another driver, and it was a trip, dude, because like it was abandoned by another driver. So what was in the truck? I had like, a gallon of urine that was in the truck. I had to clean all this stuff out. And I'm like, dude, what? And then so they started giving me loads right after that. Da, 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 da. And I jumped straight from my trainer's truck back to Dallas. And then in Dallas, they shipped you to the truck that was abandoned. And then I just started going coast to coast by myself. And I was like, dude, am I going to get some home time? Because I was promised home time. Let's see how many minutes in that. Oh, wow. Yeah. 47 minutes, man. This one's running kind of long. I don't know. Home time. Home time. All right, yeah, I'm going to cut it off. So it'll be at the trucking, almost getting my oil field job. We'll pick up there after we start off on the next episode of Oliver and Company, mate. We good for today.